Hi, I'm Ryan Drost, founder and creator of Stealth Hammer Comic. It is now live on Kickstarter, and you can also find it at stealthhammer.com. And you are watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a returning guest. He was on the show what feels like forever in internet time, but it was only a couple of years, which is still a long time. He is the creator of Stealth Hammer. He is also the host of Star Joe's, not Star Jones, like I previously mentioned in his past interview, much to my chagrin. But we were joined by the ever-talented Ryan Drost. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. You would not be you're not the first, nor would you be the last to call it Star Jones. So when we first launched it, I had people going like, really, like that's what your focus is on this one like talk show person?
Yeah.
I was like, no.
It has been far too long. It looks like you have a brand new batch of comics. You have a brand new room, it feels like. And of course, 2 years is a long time to be in the world of comics in terms of our interviews. So how have you been?
I've been doing well. Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, as I said in the intro and everything else, like we have a website now launched, which has a lot of content for people to like actually learn about the Stealth Hammer comic and everything else before they like commit to anything. I've been busy at like conventions and interviews and everything else. It's just been kind of wild. Like I actually got to fulfill like a childhood dream that I didn't even know I had, which was I had a local legend of the Cleveland area, which is where I'm living, have me on his talk show
Oh,
and talked about Stealth Hammer. So like that was really cool. It was like this guy who I grew up watching is now interviewing me. His name was Leon Bibb. He has been a local TV newscaster for like years and years and years. So I've watched him ever since I was little, and like there he is sitting across the couch from me, like interviewing me. So that was really cool.
that's awesome. And public speaking is always fun to do, and especially promotion is always fun. Any changes on that front?
Yeah, so I just recently started talking to kids and families about comic creation, which was an area I did not expect to venture down. It's one of those things where it's like you get pathways that are presented to you, and like you can either go down them or decide not to. And most of the time, I treat those like improv, where they say you're always supposed to say yes. So someone that did an article on Stealth Hammer, she was on her daughter's school board, and she was just like, "Would you like to come and talk to the kids about it?" And I was like, sure. I was like, how many kids are we looking at? Like, and I'm thinking like a small classroom. And she was just like, oh, 823 kids. She goes, don't worry though, we'll split them up into two groups.
That's good.
So I got to talk to fifth graders, sixth graders, seventh and eighth graders about comics and everything. And it's always very interesting because like fifth and sixth graders are totally into it. Like I opened up by asking like, who loves superhero movies and who reads comics and manga? And like almost all their hands went up. And then in the seventh and eighth grade group, it was like half the kids raised their hands about superhero movies and like 5 kids raised their hands about reading comics or manga. And it's like, I know more of them do. It's just not the cool thing to do when you're seventh and eighth graders. But both groups had a lot of fun. Like I kept it very interactive and they just had a blast. And little did I know this was going to turn into like a public speaking tour locally. So I have a couple lineups coming up later this year with like local libraries and everything else. And it was hilarious too, because they go to me like, well, what do you want to limit the audience down to? And I was like, well, I just presented to like 800 kids. Like, oh, I think you'll be okay then.
It's wonderful that you're into the community. It's wonderful that you're reaching out to this impressionable audience with not only your knowledge and your amazing comics, but also maybe you're going to inspire them down the creative path. And it's wonderful to see. Especially libraries are just an unsung hero of a community, and we really need more of those.
Absolutely. No, and that was the fun thing too, was like I had kids coming up to me afterwards that would just like run up. I don't know if they were allowed to or not, but they did it anyway. And like one kid wanted me to sign, I brought bookmarks to give away, and one of them wanted me to sign the bookmark for him, and then he handed me a pencil. So I kind of had to like etch it in my name into the bookmark rather than actually write it. And then he like gave me a hug for doing that. And it was just like a very sweet and odd experience at the same time, but it was fun. It was really cool. Like, and they would come up and they would ask me stuff like what social media channels I was on. They would come and ask me like, of course, they always ask like how much money you make doing it,
Yeah, of course.
which is it's like you don't do this for the money. Hopefully one day you do, but that's not what you start off doing it for. Like one kid actually came up to me, which was fantastic. He came up and he's like, I'm actually already creating my own comics right now.
Awesome.
And part of my presentation was like, you write what you know and you create what you know. And he said, yeah, my main character is based off my brother. And I was like, oh my God, that's fantastic. That's exactly what we were just talking about. So I told him, keep up at it, keep doing it. If you love it, just keep doing it. So he seemed like really like excited that somebody who is there to talk about this thing that he does is telling him to keep doing it.
No, that's great. That's great to hear. It's wonderful that you're doing this, but of course, we're here to talk about Stealth Hammer. Like this was a great segue into your own comic, and it's wonderful as well too. Because last we talked, I believe we were on either issue 1 and you were working on issue 2. But let's kind of take a step back and what is Stealth Hammer all about, and what is the journey from issue 1 to issue 2, and then we'll talk about issue 3.
Yeah, that'd be great. Stealth Hammer, the elevator pitch is that it's an all ages superhero adventure that takes place in a world of high-tech gadgetry and supernatural mythology. So the thing I relate it to is like Stargirl or Miss Marvel type of a character in the world of Mega Man meets Jim Henson's Creature Shop. She's a teenager in just starting off in college. She has a dad who is like this world-known inventor, and he works for the government creating different gadgets and everything else. And she has a mom who's like this world-traveling interior designer. So of course she's going into school for graphic design, because blend those technology and design together and you're going to get graphic designer. And so she has a lot to live up to. There's a lot of expectations. She had a grandmother who has mysteriously disappeared about 5 years ago, who was like this adventure type spirit. So she gets it from that. She's that, I want to say like that's Peter Parker, Spider-Man type character where it's like never give up. And in fact, her mantra, her motto is that's not how this story ends, which is a little bit of a meta type quote, but at the same time, like it works for that never give up attitude. And it's actually a quote that my wife actually uses in real life. And this character is based on my wife. In fact, she's named after my wife. Stealth Hammer is actually a nickname that my wife gained from working at some different places and everything else. She was known for kind of swooping in and winning a client over with some of her design. She's a graphic designer. And then she was also known for, she worked in brand compliance, which means that she had to be the one to kind of like mandate that you use certain colors and certain images and things like that. So she was the one that had to lay the hammer down. So she's put those two nicknames together of Stealth and Hammer together, and she came up with Stealth Hammer. And we said, well, that would make for a great superhero name. And we used to joke about like, oh, like what would her powers be? Who is she? And things like that. And then one year for her birthday, I had commissioned an artist to draw her as a superhero. Once I saw it physically, I was like, okay, maybe we have something here. Maybe we could do something with this. And as soon as I thought that, like, it was just like, I was literally like in a shopping plaza and was like jotting down ideas of like, who's her family? What are her powers? How did she get her powers? Who's her villains? What's her obstacles? What's her background? Like, what's her personality? Like all these types of things. So she kind of started becoming this real character. And then I kind of did those things with all of her supporting cast as well.
That's awesome. And it goes back to what you just said as well. Write what you know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And even like some of the inspirations for other things, like she has a boyfriend named Kyle. And if you look at him close enough, he looks a little bit like me. Just a little bit. Yeah. He also acts the same way I do when he's nervous, which is he uses humor and sarcasm as a self-defense mechanism, as many of us do. Her dad is actually a little bit based on my father-in-law, especially when it came to like his facial looks and his eyes and things like that. And then we had a dog named Hannah, and she sadly had passed away, and kind of like to immortalize her, she's in the story as well. And then we took a trip to Iceland, and it was the most amazing vacation trip I've ever been on. In Iceland, they have like folklore about elves and things like that. And that's where I got inspired. I picked this little guy up while I was there. This is Elf, and I was like, I'm making a character off of him.
Nice.
And I brought him home from Iceland, and that became Ari the Elf. We had the goddess Aurora because we were in like a museum that talked about the Aurora Borealis, and they were like, the goddess Aurora. And I was like, ooh, I like that. I want to use that. So all these things kind of started playing into each other. And I've been someone who, like we talked about with Star Joe's, I love 80s properties. It's the best decade ever of that type of stuff. So I always loved fantasy, and mythology, but I also loved high-tech craziness. Like there was a lot of property in the 80s that did that well, like Thunder the Barbarian, Masters of the Universe, things like that. So I kind of blended those together, but I still loved superheroes. So I threw that in there also. And it just all worked for the story that we were telling.
We're on issue 3. You have a current Kickstarter campaign with issue 3. It's great that you're continuing the series. We've talked about 1 and 2. What can you tease about issue 3 without,
Issue 3, I kind of call it the payoff issue a little bit, because when I write my stories, I have a lot of things in mind. I put a lot of little Easter eggs in the issues. This is going to mean something later. And in fact, my artist, Joel Jackson, who is incredible, he'll like in the first issue, I had a dojo where the character was coming out because I wanted to show that she knew how to fight. Because I always hated it when a character would get superpowers and all of a sudden they just know how to fight, So I wanted to establish right away, like she already has some martial arts skills, abilities, and everything else. So she comes out of the dojo and he's like, well, what do you want to name the dojo? And like he texted me this because he knew that it wasn't going to just be like Tom's Dojo. It was going to have some reason for it and everything else. So it's called Kodama Studio or Kodama Dojo. Kodama is a Japanese spirit creature, and that'll play a role later on. So like I want people to be able to read something later and come back and go, oh my God, that was in issue 1, or oh my God, that was in issue 2. So in issue 3, we're doing a flashback of Ari the Elf. We end issue 2 with Stealthhammer, Ari the Elf, Watts the robot. They're all heading to Iceland to meet the goddess Aurora. And on the way there, it's a long journey. And I thought instead of having it just be issue 3, boom, we're there, let's use up some of that time for the reader. We also ended issue 2 with a little bit of a cliffhanger. And I wanted that to simmer a little bit. So I was like, okay, issue 3 is gonna be a flashback. And the whole issue 3 is Ari the Elf's adventure to getting to the point that we were. So we get to see where he came from. It opens up the world a bit more of the elf village that he comes from and some of these mythological, supernatural characters that we've been kind of getting hints at all along. We kind of see them now a little bit more. So we just kind of keep opening that world a little bit more. And then we see his travels over to the US and into the town of Lyoness. What happened that caused him to get to the point of meeting with Jamie and her becoming Stealthhammer, because he plays a role in that. It was cool because like it's a payoff for those that read issues 1 and 2, because now they're like, this is literally the issue where you could be like, oh my God, I remember that from issue 1. Oh my God, I remember that from issue 2. But we get to see it from his perspective now.
Well, the good news is you're at least consistent with your themes, your characters. The color scheme's always beautiful as it is. I mean, you can touch a little on it on the lower thirds there. And just reading through issues 1 and 2 before this interview was just amazing to see just the connections that I started to see. And it's just going to be incredible to see issue 3 on. What's the game plan, the long run of this? Because now that we're on issue 3, is this like a 10-issue series? Is this like an omnibus, like where we're getting 50 issues? Like what's your game plan?
It's closer to omnibus. Yeah, it is a longer form. I mean, I'm hoping eventually it'll get picked up by a publisher. We're trying. It's a tough game to get into that. And that doesn't mean just a comic publisher. Like we've talked about, like graphic novels and working through a book publisher, things like that. So hopefully we know if we keep at it and keep building this story that people can see and read and enjoy, that someone's going to want to pick this up. I've had a lot of nice compliments from people that have turned me down, which is perfectly fine. But I've had people say like, this has a nice commercial feel to it. And they mean that as a compliment as a book publisher, saying like, and we've had so many people that have read it that are just like, didn't know what to expect. And then when they read it, it was like, oh, I really like this world that you're creating. One of the nice compliments I got, because it was something that we were always working towards with this, is someone read issue 1 and they referred to it as like this golden age throwback type story. The hero appears, she gets her power, she fights a bad guy, end of story. But we did throw little nuggets in there and everything else. And the guy said that when he read issue 2, it paid off all the things he was hoping it was going to pay off, because he read issue 2 and that's where we really show, okay, you thought that this was just your normal superhero story, but now we're opening this world up and we're really giving you a glimpse. Like there's a 2-page spread that Joel did that he fit more than I could possibly imagine into this page. Like I threw everything in the kitchen sink at him and he gave me more than that. It's a page you can look at for a while. There's just so much of the history that you kind of see glimpses of in there. That started playing into this whole like okay, this is a larger world. This isn't just superhero goes out and fights, the mugger on the street. That's why I call it a superhero adventure instead of just a superhero story.
The Kickstarter campaign, obviously, there's a lot to do, to put together. You have a lot of content you're going to be creating. What type of perks or levels do you have in regards to this that you're really excited about showing those that not only have followed the comic for a long time, but newcomers to trying to get into it?
Those have been following it for a while. We always have, you have your main cover that's done by Joel, which is always amazing. And this one's going to be a lot of fun. But then we always have a variant cover involved as well. And I always try to find somebody whose artwork I admire and look up to. And this is one of those dream things where you're like, I want to work with this person just once. So first issue, we had Robert Atkins as the variant artist. And I've known him a long time. And he was amazing in offering to do a cover for that. That's actually the picture you see right there behind me is the one he did. Issue 2, we had Chrissy Zulo, and she's just got this beautiful, perfect artwork for something like this. So then I reached out this time to her husband, which is Chris Uminga, who's also very well known out there. He's had DC statues done, and he's done work for Disney and everything else. He did this amazing piece of Ari the Elf. There'll be a level where you can get both covers. Even if you pick one of the earlier levels, you could still add his issue in the add-ons. You can get the past issues if you've never gotten any of them before. There are a couple packages that have all of the issues, but then all the issues are also still available in the add-ons area. So even if you pick a tier that doesn't have the first couple issues and you want them, you'll still be able to add them on. So we always have a bundle pack that has like both issues, has a bookmark, has some mini prints, we have a sticker sheet this time that we've never done before, and it came out amazing. And then when we get up to some of the higher tiers, we have things that I've always done where you can get a copy of the script with little writer notes on the side. I go into the script afterwards and like actually put little commentary next to every page and what I was trying to go for with this and what I was trying to think of when we were creating certain things. So a little bit behind the scenes with that. First time ever doing this. I'm very excited about this, but I'm also a little sad, and I'll explain why. We are doing an exclusive print for this Kickstarter. Joel is drawing this epic battle scene. And if you see Joel's artwork on the page, like even in that first issue that I know I sent to you, like he fits a lot into a page.
Oh yeah.
And so when you go to him then and say, I want you to fit even more into this big, huge, epic scene. And I gave him all the list of characters that you could possibly use. And I was like, and then here's some you could throw in there if you want to. I can almost guarantee all of them are going to be in there. And I told him that the idea behind it was the ending of Rocky 3, when Apollo and Rocky are about to throw that punch at each other. That's the scene I want. I want the good guys and the bad guys, and they're just about to throw at each other. So he has sent me a bunch of sketches of what that's going to look like. And we will have the black and white available to see on the Kickstarter. It won't be fully colored until the Kickstarter's over and people are getting their rewards, but you'll be able to see all the detail artwork that's going to go into it. The reason I said I'm sad about that is because it's going to be a limited print only available for this Kickstarter. So there's going to be 50 of them. It's never going to be reproduced after that. So there'll be 50 of them. Well, there'll be 51 technically, and I'll tell you where the extra one comes from. 50 of them available for people to pick as a package. And they'll get all the comic stuff, everything before it, but they'll also get that special print. It'll be numbered and signed. So Joel and myself will both sign it as well. We will have the original artwork available for that as well. So that's the part where the extra one comes in. Because of course, the person who buys the original artwork should also get a copy of the print. That person, they can get that one-of-a-kind original artwork. The other thing we're going to have available this time that we've never done before, because Joel typically works in digital format, we've never had original artwork. Other than the cover that Robert did for issue 1, there's no original artwork for Stealth Hammer. Well, actually, I should correct that. Issue 1's back cover also had original artwork. So those are the only 2 pieces of original artwork, and I own one of them. I own Robert's cover, and the only reason I own it is because no one backed it. Otherwise it would have gone out to a backer, but no one backed it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to keep it. So we will have the original artwork. So what Joel's doing for this one though, is because it's a flashback story, he decided that every page, which is almost the entire story, that was part of the flashback story, he was going to draw traditionally. So he's going to draw on paper and everything else. He rightfully so is going to be keeping a lot of that for his own portfolio and everything else, but he is donating 5 pages of original artwork that will be available for the Kickstarter. So if you loved his work and you love all the detail he puts into everything, you're going to be able to own a piece of that. So that's very exciting that there'll actually be some physical pages available for people.
Original artwork is usually hard to come by, especially nowadays, like you just mentioned. But even more so when you look at the older comic artists and the older things that used to just give them away at like conventions and things like. Now that they have value, not only from an art perspective but from a monetary perspective, it's incredible to see. And down the road, these pieces, I'm sure, will have that intrinsic value.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because like Joel, like one my favorite artist of all time, comic artist of all time, is George Perez, who we sadly lost. But he fit so much into a page. And I don't know if Joel took knowing that and it's why he puts so much into a page for me, or if he just likes doing that. I think he just likes doing it. But he has that ability to put just so much into a page that you can just look at it, and every time you look at it, you find something new on it. It also works from a collaborative standpoint. Sometimes I'll write a lot of detail. Again, when we did that 2-page spread in issue 2, there was a ton of detail written in there because I knew everything I wanted in there. But then there's a page like the last page of issue 2 where we see the goddess and we see the village and everything else. And I think I wrote like 2-3 lines of what I wanted on that page, and he came up with this amazing piece. But then it's funny because he'll draw stuff in a scene, and all of a sudden I'll see it and I'll be totally inspired by it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's now a story element that we're going to use in the future.
It's like your very own Where is Waldo for your own comics.
There's so many things. Like we have the Labites, which are like these little robot assistants, which we will see in issue 3. We saw them in issue 2. We'll see them again in issue 3 from Ari's, the elf's perspective, which is a little contentious. But that was a happy accident. It was something where Joel was drawing Dr. Everett and his style and everything else. And he drew this little robot on his shoulder. He sent the sketch to me, and he was just like, I just thought he'd be someone that would have these like little assistants that work with him. And I was like, yeah, I agree. I think that's a fantastic idea. You should totally run with that. He drew, for the cover of issue 1, he drew 8 of these robots, and they're just like flying around and everything else. And I saw that, and I remember texting him going, Joel, now I need to write names for all these characters and personalities for all these characters. And we did this behind the scenes book, and you can see right here, there's all 8 of them listed. And underneath every single one, it has what their name is, what role they play, what their personality is, all this type of stuff. That's like my source book to remind me who they all are. It was one of these things where it was a happy accident, because now I have 8 characters, and for some writers that might be a burden. For me, I'm like, oh, cool, I have 8 more characters I can do stuff with now.
And eventually they'll tie into books 5 through 28 million. So there you
right.
go.
Well, and also one of the things that I'm trying to do, I'm going to start doing on the website after this Kickstarter is over, and hopefully it'll be successful, so I'll have a little bit of time to do this, is on the website itself, I thought about like, how do I create an audience when I'm not the artist? We're going to be expanding the website. Like right now we have where you can learn about the characters and you can learn about the origin, but we're also going to delve into the world of Stealth Hammer and kind of show some different significance things. But I'm going to start writing little short stories that take place in that world. They'll just be prose stories. There won't be, sadly, unfortunately, there won't be any pictures. But it's a different type of writing. So it gives me a chance to kind of like stretch those legs a little bit and like tell these little short stories about characters that I want to tell stories about that maybe we won't get to really delve into those stories in the comic itself. So maybe there will be a Labite adventure where they go out like batteries not included and go on this crazy adventure together. So it gives me a chance to really kind of broaden that world, and gives people a reason to come back to the website and kind of see what's new and out there.
It'd be funny if there was like a mother Labite or something like that in some pocket universe. Happens to be their home world, and the doctor thinks that he actually created him in his mind, but in reality it's just like a portal that just opens up.
That's not a bad idea, because we will be dealing with portals to other dimensions in Stealth Hammer. So
I'll just take it like a side, special thanks.
Right. Yep. Sounds good. If I use that idea, I will definitely give you credit. Inspired by the creation of Kurt Sasso.
I love it. That's great. You've had so much experience when it comes to writing. You've had great journey with Star Joe's. I still think you're right. The 80s is still the best decade when it comes to the creation. Even though it was a marketing decade, it was our nostalgia that basically drove that industry. But it's still an amazing decade to deal with. I'm glad you're drawing inspirations from it to create an amazing series in 2024 and beyond. And I really think that it's just something that is needed for kids today that are so glued to technology that, hey, here's something that's more physical. Here's something that is in your hands, and it's educational and entertaining as well.
Thanks. Yeah, it is one of those things like I definitely pulled from things I enjoyed. Like when I mentioned Jim Henson's Creature Shop, I think of stuff like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth and things like that I grew up with. And I remember there's a character, Marzana, who makes a brief appearance in the first issue, and she hasn't been really named yet. We'll learn about her in issue 4. Well, she is named in the back story of issue 1, so we do get her actual name. But the character Marzana, she's a Polish deity of death, and which is not something you'd picture being in an all ages comic. But I remember my wife saying, she's like, she looks creepy. And she's like, I thought this was an all ages comic you were making. And I go, it is, but it's the all ages comic that I grew up with in the 80s, which is like, it's okay if you still get some nightmares from it. So
that was the epitome of what made Henson's work so amazing and so great, because he took the love of, say, like Fraggle Rock, and took the love of his entire workshops and Labyrinth, and like, look, Dark Crystal was a scary movie for a young kid. I think I subconsciously like repressed that after a while, and then I kind of rewatched. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why I haven't watched this in like 30 years. It scared the crap out of me. Like,
it is. And then they brought it back on Netflix for like Beneath the Dark Crystal.
Thanks. I wasn't quite over that. It's like hashtag too soon or something like that.
Right. Oh, and then you had stuff like the sequel to The Wizard of Oz, where it was Return to Oz, where you had the queen that had the heads she could take off, and you walk into a room of like all these heads going on. I was just like, wow. Like, and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, you had the boat scene. Like, I remember watching a comedian that said he was told to go down in the basement and here, watch this, just to get him out of the way. And he's sitting in the basement, and he goes, and then the boat scene happened. And he's like, Mama.
There's so much that we could dive into here, and we could spend a lot of time. Before I wrap things up, is there anything that I haven't asked? And we'll talk about social media, where we can find the campaign, et cetera, that you'd like to dive into here?
No, not really. Like I said, I just ask the people, do give it a chance to like back it and read the story, because like I said, I get from so many people, this is not me, as much as I believe this, of course. I hear from people that say they read it and they're like, you have something here. You have something special here. So I hope that people like pick it up, read it, and just enjoy it. That's all I want. Is like, I'm trying to tell, like, I get asked so many times, like, are you writing a story about female empowerment because your character is a female? I was like, no, I'm writing a character with a female character because it's based off my wife, and my wife is a female. So now if you get female empowerment out of it, fantastic. Like, I love that. There's other elements that come out of the story too that I never imagined, but they kind of started becoming story elements. Like on the good guy side, you have fantasy and technology working together, where on the bad guy side, it kind of gets forced together. Mm-hmm. So like there's different story things that you can kind of pull out, and different themes and everything else. But again, in my opinion, if you're telling a good story, which I hope Stealth Hammer is, those elements, everyone gets something out of it themselves. I'm not telling you what you should get out of it. I'm just hoping you enjoy the ride.
And eventually, this could be either a TV series or, maybe a full-length feature / trilogy.
Oh, man. I can tell you right now, like, I was just literally talking to my wife the other day about this, and I said, I'm writing the story because I love it and I enjoy it. But when someone asked me what's the dream, I was like, the dream is the action figures, the Ari the Elf plushie, the remote control Watts the robot, the Netflix series, the movie. I was like, I have theme music already in mind. Like, there's just all like those. That's the dream, and you shoot for the dream, and you kind of see where you land. And hopefully you hit the dream. If you don't, I'm extremely proud of what we've created so far, and I'm going to continue to be proud of what we create going forward. But yeah, there's reality and there's the dream, but you work towards the dream, and hopefully one day it becomes a reality. I would love nothing more than a Stealth Hammer action figure. Like, that would be fantastic.
You could always 3D print one.
I could. I want one with like Hasbro on it, or
okay. Something. You could add that into the foot and just say, you could call it Has Not Bro.
Right. But I've also mentioned, like, there's little things in life where, like, I just seeing my name on a physical copy of the comic with the first day it showed up was just like, I got teary-eyed. It was just amazing. And like I said, if I was ever at a convention and someone showed up cosplaying as one of my characters, I think I would leap over the table to get a picture with that person. I'd probably scare them to death, but it's like just those little moments like that you really hold on to. And like I said, that's kind of what I try to do in the story too. I try to show these little moments that are going to mean something down the line.
Since we're talking TV and film or Netflix and whatever, live action version of Stealth Hammer.
Yeah.
Who are your main cast of characters? Because I'm really curious, because you could go in a really different range of characters.
Yeah, I am terrible when it comes to modern day actors and actresses. So like knowing who, but I want someone who kind of embodies that never give up spirit. So like I think the casting, I'll give you an example. The casting of Miss Marvel for the Miss Marvel series was perfect. She was a fan, she was enthusiastic, and she was very good at acting. So she wanted to put everything into that character. And that's kind of what I want. Is I want someone that's going to be in that late teens, maybe early 20s, because I know they can always play younger, that would then like embody that spirit, that never give up spirit and everything else. Ari the Elf, you can totally go CG with him, or my ideal, of course, would be puppetry, and then have somebody that voices it. I mean, who thought that Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon would work? But it was like the most perfect casting in the world. So I think something like that, I would just like, if I was allowed to be part of the casting, I would just like close my eyes and say, okay, say the line. And it doesn't matter what the person looked like. I want to be able to hear Ari the Elf. So in an ideal world, it not only obviously live action would be fantastic, but really, if I had my choice, I would be picking like a Netflix like animated series, six episodes, 7 episodes that kind of introduce the character and that world. So
8 episodes is kind of like a standard miniseries when it comes to Netflix or any streaming platform. You see it a lot in Korean drama and Korean television. Look, here's 8 hours of content. I mean, you're going to burn through it in 4, but
Yeah, and I think what's happened a lot of times too is and the reason it works so well is not just because of attention span, but let's face it, when we would watch 24 episodes of a show, there was like 14 episodes of like filler episodes that had nothing to do with the larger story. It was just kind of like, they were not saying they were bad, they were fine, but they just didn't play into the larger story. Now these 8 episodes, very rarely do you get filler episodes. They all mean something, they all matter. So
Ryan, we could talk for a few more hours here, but you're always welcome on the show, because I unfortunately have to end this episode of Two Geeks Talking. Thanks so much for coming back on.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Yes, I will make sure to, I know I said it last time, but I will make sure that I make a point to schedule something with you where we can talk about Star Joe's and the 1980s properties. So we will definitely do that.
Yeah, maybe sometime later on down the year or in the beginning of next year, let's get something together, because we talk about it, but we just never really dive into it. And I think we need to have a nostalgia trip for at least like 45 minutes,
Right, absolutely. Well, I will tell you, next year will be the closure of Star Joe's. So I will have gone 15 years of doing the podcast, and we'll be ending it with the 300th episode. So I think right before wrapping it up would be a good time to come on and talk about the experience of doing a show for 15 years. So
I'm with you on that. So I will clear anyone that's scheduled for the time slot you want. They are being shifted. You're getting top priority on that. You heard it here first. So there you go. I don't care if it's an A-list actor. Yeah, Tom Cruise, or I need to shift you down a bit. I got a good friend of mine for the last 15 years. There you go.
Just bring me on that episode. That'll be fine.
I got a special guest co-host. Here's Ryan, and Ryan's just is like this the entire time. He's not frozen. He's just in shock. It's okay.
Shock. Yeah, exactly.
Well, like I said, that is this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. Before I let you go, where can we find you? How can we support you? And of course, where's this amazing campaign and anything else you would like to promote?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It is on Kickstarter. If you search Stealth Hammer, you will find it. And you can also go to the stealthhammer.com website, and there is a banner there for the Kickstarter as well. So you don't have to like remember the name necessarily as much as far as like which platform was it again. Just remember Stealth Hammer and stealthhammer.com. So super easy. And there's a banner there. Please back it and support it. I put a lot of my own money into it this time, and all of the money from this is going towards the creators. I get none of it. Even though I'm one of the creators, I'm putting it all there for the production and for the creators to make sure they get paid well, and so that we can have this amazing piece of work that's out there. So I sold a lot of my own collection this time, and of comic collections and collectibles and things like that, to help bring the goal lower than it's ever been. So that's how much it means to me. So I really appreciate people just checking it out. Hopefully you find something you like, and that you'll back it and help us get to that goal earlier rather than later.
Now what you need to do is have like an Amazon wish list or something to get your collection back, and then
Right.
so it's like a continuous cycle of funding and
Right.
funding and returning, and
Right. Well, just like anybody else, when you're a collector, it's a matter of space. So this was a lot of stuff that was just like, I'd rather see it go to a good home and someone that could really hopefully enjoy it, and it helps fund something that's a dream of mine. So.
And you don't have to get an extended garage or
Right.
a detached garage just for your collection. There you go.
Exactly.
Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our website, tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com. I hate to say it, but the website is going through a complete rebuild because it's been a while. So go to our YouTube channel that is always updated, youtube.com/TGT Media. The podcast is back at twogeekstalking.podbean.com, or just search Two Geeks Talking wherever you get your podcasts, and check out Ryan's past interview as well as this one. And of course, as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.